Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Ascending Souls podcast number 4. And today we've got we're basically just going to be going along with what's going on with COVID in the headlines. I must clarify, Jack isn't here with me today. It is only me today. And I know we haven't uploaded a video in about 6 days. We've been quite busy this week. Obviously, I'm working on music projects with someone. Jack's been working quite a lot. So it's been quite difficult to get together and get a conversation going, but I felt it was important to get some information out there, so I decided to do one on my own today. And we're going to take a deep dive into what's going on with COVID, and we're going to take a look at how they're using these restrictions and how they're using the media to kind of introduce their new plans. And a lot of people may have suspected that there was something cynical with COVID. I think a lot of people are having that thought now that we're seeing the way it's planning out. And I think a lot of people who are on the fence, they're starting to kind of awaken a bit and kind of, look into the reasons why this is being exaggerated and understand, what is really going on. Because, I don't think anyone can doubt that there is something fishy going on. And it's quite frustrating for a lot of people. A lot of people are getting frustrated with the new lockdown law that was just put in today. So, new tier 4 in London. So I think it's a national lockdown. I'll have to double check that, but I think it is a national lockdown. Going into tier 4, so tougher restrictions. Obviously, Christmas is coming up. We're only allowed one day to see people, from what I've heard. I've heard that they're going to be cracking down on Christmas Day. They don't want people travelling on Christmas Day. Now, the problem is with that is Christmas Day is a specific day. They know people are going to be out on that particular day. This is the worry for me. If they say, we're introducing these lockdown rules and, we're doing it for the next 2 months, you can kind of go, okay, well, I can go out, but there's a risk of being pulled and stopped. Where are you going? Why are you going here? Whatever. But the funny thing is, at Christmas, they know people are going to want to travel. So I think there's going to be a lot of police presence. I think there's going to be people pulling you over. So if you are travelling for Christmas, just remember that the Act of Union basically says that no law imposed can ever restrict the free movement of a Brit, and that's kind of a general summary of what the law imposes. Obviously, have a look at yourself, have a look, check it up. But this is really important for us to know, and we kind of need to know that we can keep our freedom. We can do this. We just have to work together. And a lot of people seeing, problems with these new restrictions and, problems with the way the government are handling it. And one thing I keep saying to people is that, that they feel as though whatever they do doesn't matter. But it does. We all need to come together. We all need to come together and basically tell the government, we're not going to keep going along with these plans. Too many people have suffered, and we're not talking about COVID deaths or COVID cases. We're talking about economically. We're talking about people losing their jobs. We're talking about the country on their knees, going to universal credit, which was always the plan, by the way, always to get people to jump onto universal credit, be dependent on the government. There's a lot of questions around that and how they're using people to get onto universal credit, basic income, and a lot of people are suffering from this, and it's gone on too far. And I think a lot of people are starting to really get frustrated with the government and how they're handling. So we're going to jump in now. I've rambled on for too long, so we're going to ramble in. We're going to jump on in. And I've got a few articles here that I've just pulled up. Now, I'm going to bring up one article first. This article I was made aware of this article from a video from Computing Forever. And I think we may have mentioned Computing Forever in the last podcast. I can't remember. Computing Forever is a very good channel. He goes into news about COVID restrictions globally, and he kind of lays out a good picture of where it's heading. And then a video from months ago, he done a video on this Canadian article, And I'll read it out for you now. I'm just getting it up. Now, it's quite interesting because it kind of lays out the map of where it's heading. So I am going to leave a link to the video of Computing Forever analysing this article, because I think it's very interesting to listen to his analysis and see his point of view from it. He has a very, very kind of, what do you say, unbiased opinion, and it's quite scary. I mean, to think that we could potentially have the plans for you know what they're heading for, and it seems as though a few of these have come true already. And now remember, this article was written in October, so it's October the 10th, 2020, and this is the article. Dear Removed, I want to provide you with some very important information. I'm a committee member within the Liberal Party of Canada. I sit within several committee groups, but the information I'm providing is originating from the Strategic Planning Committee, which is steered by the PMO. I need to start off by saying that I'm not happy doing this, but I have to. As a Canadian, and more importantly as a parent who wants a better future for not only for my children, but for other children as well. The other reason I'm doing this is because roughly 30% of the committee members are not pleased with the direction this will take Canada, but our opinions have been ignored and they plan on moving forward towards their goals. They have also made it very clear that nothing will stop the planned outcomes. The roadmap and aim was set out by the PMO and is as follows. So these are all the points of what they're looking to do, basically. Phase in secondary lockdown restrictions on a rolling basis, starting with the major metropolitan areas first and expanding outward, expected by November 2020. And we've seen this with the lockdown 2. We've seen how they're really pushing on cities, putting the restrictions in, kind of putting a lot of pressure on the cities to follow COVID rules. So yeah, there's kind of a lot of truth in that. Next point. Rush the acquisition of, or construction of, isolation facilities across every province and territory, expected by December 2020. Now, obviously, I haven't heard of these isolation centres yet, and it's something that we've been talking about for a while within the community, how it could be an option. And to me, that sounds like a concentration camp. You'll be forced under your will, without your will. You'll be taken somewhere and told you need to isolate because you've got this deadly disease that could kill people, even though you may not even feel the symptoms at all. And it's quite scary because it means that they are able to do that without your permission. If they feel you are a threat, they can take you away from your family and into a centre where they can isolate you. And it's quite scary to think that could be, and I'm not saying for definite that is the direction we're heading, but from the way it looks, the way the government are implementing tighter restrictions and kind of trying to come down on people, it seems like that could be a potentially quite plausible and quite scary if that does happen. So we've got a new one here. Daily new cases of COVID-19 will surge beyond capacity of testing, including increases in COVID-related deaths following the same growth curves expected by the end of November 2020. Well, we've seen this, haven't we? We've seen cases rise. We've seen deaths. They say they have risen, but I remember when we were in the midst of the pandemic and we were apparently, at the worst part, even though we're being told this is the worst part, which is even crazier. I remember the deaths were up 1,500 a day, and it seems as though we're about 400 or so in London. So, to be honest, to me, it doesn't seem like a massive threat. Sorry. So, next point. Complete and total secondary lockdown, much stricter than the first and second rolling phase restrictions, expected by the end of December 2020, early January 2020. Reform and expansion of the unemployment program to be transitioned into universal basic income program, expected by first quarter of 2021. Now, that's quite an interesting point. I think this needs to be addressed. The more people that go into universal basic income, the more people dependent on government. And a very, very important point that we must make is that you're not eligible for basic income if you have savings. So that means that you have to use all your savings before you are eligible. Now you might say, well, isn't that fair? These people have savings put away for a reason. Isn't this one of the reasons? Now, you could say that, but think about it. If everyone uses all their savings, in the end, everyone ends up with the same. No one will be able to save money. I mean, have you ever tried living off universal basic income? If you haven't, it's very difficult, and you can't live your life like that. So it's a way of making you dependent. Now, this is why I think the restrictions are put into place. I think this is why they're trying to stop companies from selling and opening up shop doors. It's putting more people into unemployment and more people dependent on the government, which means they have control of your money. And when they have control of your money, it means that they can get you to do anything. So potentially what it could lead to, if you say something that maybe they don't like on the internet, stop your money. Maybe you break COVID restrictions, stop your money. So it's a way of having a hold over the public that you can't change. I mean, they can say they can fine you, and if they, see you out, they can pull you over, and but they're not involved with you, economically. And this is just another way of basically getting you to do as they're told. Like, we're little school children. Just kind of listen to what they say, and this will all be over. It sounds very cynical. I don't like it at all. So another point. Projected COVID-19 mutation and or co-infection with secondary virus, referred to as COVID-21, leading to a third wave with much higher mortality rate and higher rate of infection, expected by February 2021. Now, in the UK, in the past week, Matt Hancock has announced that we have a new strain of COVID, and it's looking a lot more infectious. Now, I've got two articles here. I've actually got a few more articles on this, but I'm just going to address these two at the moment. So the first article is, what is the new COVID strain and will vaccines work against it? It's quite an interesting article. It didn't come across to me that they're trying to scare the public with this article. But what's very funny is that this article was posted at 5:37 today, which is the 19th of December 2020. And another article that was posted. So this first article was The Guardian. We've got another article here from the Mail Online. And I'm just going to try and get up when. So this was updated 6:10 on the 19th of December 2020. So for me, about 2 hours ago. Now, this takes a lot more of a fearful approach of the new virus. This is the worst moment of the pandemic, says Sage expert, as it's revealed new super COVID strain is up 70 more infectious and makes up 60% of new cases in London. Now, if you look at the contrast between them articles, it creates a lot of confusion. So imagine you took all your all your opinions and all your views from mainstream media. God forbid. But anyway, imagine if you did and you're checking out these two articles, you wouldn't know what to think. Very difficult. Now, I know obviously I'm reading just the headline, so I will go into the Guardian's article just now, and I will read you a few lines. So it says, viruses mutate all the time. Most of the new variants die out. Sometimes they spread without altering the virus's behaviour. Very occasionally, they trigger dramatic changes. And the question now facing scientists is straightforward. Does variant VU1202012/01, I'm just going to refer to it as COVID-21. They don't refer to it as COVID-21. Just to make it easier for this podcast, I'm going to refer to it as COVID-21. So, And the question now facing scientists is straightforward. Does variant COVID-21 fall into this last category? Does it represent an increased health risk, or has its recent rapid spread through southern England occurred because it's arisen in people who are infecting a lot of other people, possibly because they are ignoring COVID-19 restrictions? Now, that's quite an important paragraph there, because they're trying to impose the idea that the only reason this virus has been able to mutate is because people aren't doing as what they're told. And we kind of get this a lot from mainstream media, don't we? We kind of get, you're to blame. Why can't you just stay indoors and do as you're told, and all this will go away. Give up your freedom now for freedom later, It's just absolutely ridiculous. So we'll move on. These key questions debated last week after Health Secretary Matt Hancock revealed the existence of the new variant were answered firmly yesterday by the government's Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty. So this is Chris Whitty. As a result of the rapid spread of the new variant, preliminary modelling data and rapidly rising incidence rates in the southeast, he announced the new and emerging respiratory virus threats advisory group NERVTAG now considers that the new strain can spread more quickly. We have alerted the World Health Organization and we are continuing to analyse the valuable data to improve our understanding. Now, we move on to the article. These analyses will involve scientists growing the new strain in laboratories, studying its antibodies response and testing its cross-reactions with COVID-19 vaccines. In addition, health officials are now carrying out random sequencing of samples from positive cases across the country in order to survey its spread through the nation and to build up regional maps of its prevalence. This will take at least 2 weeks. So, I think what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be sold this idea that it's not too bad, guys. Just kind of go on with it, because this is the kind of tone I'm getting at the moment. So I think with the mortality rates, they're not going to be that high. But going by what the Canadian report was saying, the article that we are first reading, it looks as though February 2021 is going to be when it starts to really show itself. So I wouldn't expect within the next couple of weeks any major news on that. I would think that they're going to try and push towards this idea that COVID-21 is going to be a lot more infectious, a lot more dangerous, and a lot more deadly. So I think we've got to be make sure we're alert to see what's going to happen in the next couple of months. Needs to be making sure that we're looking at every article, making sure that we're keeping updated on the new coronavirus strain. Because if you look at the connotations and the tones of the articles, you can kind of get a sense of where they're trying to head, what direction they're trying to head. So we're going to carry on with this Canadian report article because I think it's really important, this article. So yeah, we're going to carry on. Daily new cases of COVID-21 hospitalisations and COVID-19 and COVID-21 related deaths will exceed medical care facilities capacity expected by the first or second quarter of 2021. So it looks as though February time we're going to get, and what we've got to remember is that the date might be a little bit off. This is the plans revealed for Canada. Now obviously this is a global plan, this is a global effort, but we do have to think that it might be just a mixed up. So if Canada imposed this 2 months ahead, we could maybe expect it 2 months later, whatever. So we need to make sure that we're keeping updated with this and seeing how it's affecting the rest of the world, because it kind of gives us a feel for how it could be here in England and the UK. Sorry, that's my phone going off. Anyway, so we're going to carry on with the article. Enhanced lockdown restrictions, referred to as third lockdown, will be implemented. Full travel restrictions will be imposed, including inter-province and inter-city, expected by the second quarter of 2021. Transitioning of individuals into the universal basic income expected mid second quarter of 2021. So this is a very important point, this next one. Projected supply chain breakdowns, inventory shortage, large economic instability expected the late second quarter of 2021. Now this is a very important point. So we're talking about how they're locking down. Think about how the third lockdown is going to affect businesses. And we keep getting a sold idea that, you can get your freedom and then it just gets taken back. What's even crazy about this is that last week on Wednesday we got put into tier 3. Less than a week later we get put into tier 4. So you go into tier 3, you get told, oh, you know what, you can go 5 days, Christmas. Suddenly it's taken away from you like that. And I think this is a way to unsettle the public and make them a bit more indecisive. And shall I go on Christmas? I don't want to risk it, And I think this is what it's looking to do. And we've got the last point here, and I think this is probably the scariest of them all. Deployment of military personnel into major metropolitan areas, as well as all major roadways, to establish travel checkpoints, restrict travel and movement, provide logistical support to the area. Expected by the third quarter of 2021. The travel checkpoints is something I'd like to address. I'm going to sound a bit nerdy now, but who cares? There's a game I've recently bought, and it's called Watch Dogs Legion. Now, this is set in London, and when they mention the travel checkpoints, it's very interesting because in the game, you have checkpoints within the major roads. And if you're wanted by the police or whatever, it flags up. They know you've crossed that checkpoint. They know where you are. And I think this is going to be the same way with COVID. If you've been suspected of COVID and it pops up on your track and trace, and you pass through these checkpoints, an alarm is raised. And once that alarm is raised, you have no control over what happens next. And I think this is quite important because when the military come in, it's a big presence. It changes everything. It changes the way we respond to the restrictions. It changes the way we perceive the restrictions. It changes people's ideas of maybe going out and kind of maybe, risking going out. And it's a very forceful way of doing it. Now, obviously, this is coming from an article, and we can't say how plausible it is, but judging from what's already come true within the article, I think we can say that it's definitely plausible. It's something to look out for. It's good to have this information because keep an eye out. If it doesn't happen, brilliant, because in a way, we don't want this to happen. If it does, then we know that, potentially all the other plans could arise. So yeah, it's quite worrying. So we're going to go along with the article now. Along with that provided roadmap, the Strategic Planning Committee was asked to design an effective way of transitioning Canadians to meet unprecedented economic endeavour, one that would change the face of Canada and forever alter the lives of Canadians. What we were told was that in order to offset what was essentially an economic collapse on an international scale, that the federal government was going to offer Canadians a total debt relief. This is how it works. The federal government will offer to eliminate all personal debts, mortgages, loans, credit cards, etc., which all funding will be provided to Canada by the IMF under what will become known as the World Debt Reset Programme. In exchange for acceptance of this total debt forgiveness, the individual would forfeit ownership of any and all property and assets forever. The individual would also have to agree to partake in COVID-19 and COVID-21 vaccination schedule, which provide the individual with unrestricted travel and unrestricted living even under a full lockdown, though the use of photo identification referred to as Canada's Health Pass. That, for me, is very... And I know I say it a lot. I've been saying it a lot for this podcast, but these are very important points. I think we really need to make sure that we're making people aware of this. I know many people in debt, family members, even very close family members are in debt, and it's difficult. People. It's difficult to kind of deal with these debts and pay them off, and I think a lot of people are going to take that option. They'll see it as a small sacrifice for a big payoff. And in the short run, that is it. It's a big payoff for small consequences. But when we look at the long run, how does that pan out? So we're going to carry on here. Committee members asked who would become the owner of the forfeited property and assets in that scenario, and would that happen to, and what would happen to lenders or financial institutions. We were simply told the World Debt Reset Program will handle all the details. Several committee members also questioned what would happen to individuals if they refused to participate in the World Debt Reset Program, or the health pass, or the vaccination schedule. And the answer we got was very troubling. Essentially, we were told it was our duty to make sure we came up with a plan to ensure that would never happen. We were told it was an individual's best interest to participate. When several committee members pushed relentlessly to get an answer, we were told that those who refused would first live under the lockdown restrictions indefinitely, and that over a short period of time, as more Canadians transitioned into debt forgiveness program, the ones who refused to participate would be deemed a public safety risk and would be relocated into isolation facilities. Once in those facilities, they would be given two options: participate in the debt forgiveness program and be released, or stay indefinitely in the isolation facility under the classification of a serious public health risk and have all their assets seized. So either way, you're giving up all your assets, basically. I mean, come on. I don't generally get annoyed or angry, but you know, it's very difficult to not be like that, and it just seems so. Either way, you don't get to keep your things. You're not given any option. I mean, how ludicrous is that? That's crazy. You have to go through the debt relief program. It just fathoms. I mean, obviously we can't say if this is going to happen, but we will find out within the next coming year. And it's crazy. You know, how are we going to deal with this? We all need to come together. You know, we all need to share this information and let people know what's going on, and don't just preach to people. This never seems to work. You know, on this podcast, we always try and do it in a way that we can come up with a convincing argument. We don't want to preach to you guys. We want to tell you what to think, because that's the complete opposite of what we want to do. You're told what to think constantly, everywhere. The media, news, everything is telling you how to think, what opinions you should have, what opinions you should have on this issue or that issue. And we need to start telling people to create their own ways of thinking, you know. So, you know, expand your knowledge, expand your understanding of the world that we live in. And you know, some people don't even want to do that, and we really as collectively need to encourage people to be learning, you know, encouraging people to get out there and discover the secrets of the world and expose the truth, because this is what it's about. You know, this is what's going to stop all this tyranny and, you know, destruction of basically the world the way it is now. So it's going to be quite interesting to see where it plans out. So as you can imagine, after hearing, so this is the article. So as you can imagine, after hearing all of this, it turned into quite the heated discussion and escalated on anything I've ever witnessed before. In the end, it was implied by the PMO that the whole agenda will move forward no matter who agrees with it or not. That it won't just be Canada, but in fact all nations will have similar roadmaps and agendas. That we need to take advantage of the situation before take advantage of the situation before us to promote change on a grander scale for the betterment of everyone. Well, to me, it doesn't sound like it's the betterment for everyone, because I won't own anything. I won't own my guitars. I'm a musician, by the way, if you didn't already know. I won't own my guitars. I won't own my PC. I won't own my TV, my laptop, my bed. Nothing will be mine. It will all be owned by the government. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous, but this is the problem, because if you got told this was going to happen now, you'd be like, nah, they won't be able to do that. I remember having conversations with people a year ago saying about COVID passes. You know, COVID passes will be implemented. This is what this is what people are going to be pushed to have. A COVID pass that lets people know you've been vaccinated, and you're going to have to show it. It's going to be a health pass. And a lot of people say, no, that's crazy. They would never do that. You know, and now we're getting a lot of talk of health passes, COVID passes, and we're seeing all this happen. So, you know, it's showing that a lot of the stuff we're predicting, once you know the destination, you can figure out the journey. You know, once you know where they want to be, you can learn how they're going to use that. And one of the problems is that they don't impose these restrictions and these tyrannical ways straight away. It's a gradual process. It's a breaking down of society. It takes time. You can't impose these things straight away. And this is why people say, oh, that's crazy. Yeah, it might be crazy now. But what about in a year's time when people's perception of COVID changes? What about if the perception, generally speaking, is COVID is so dangerous that we need tighter restrictions. We need people to listen. So maybe people will be on board with the idea of becoming a bit more tyrannical, being a bit more forceful with getting people to listen. This is the problem. And you need to and try not to be angry with the government. The way I look at it, and the way a lot of people look at it, is that the government itself is always going to try and impose more restrictions and impose more control. That's just a no-go. I mean, they're clearly going to do that, right? You should be annoyed with the people who are complying. It's only because of them. And I don't mean go out there and start shouting at them and you know, beating them up. No, we do not incite violence here. We do not incite, you know, any wrongdoing. But you need to convince these people in a persuasive way. And I think this is one of the key points, isn't it? Because a lot of people talk about what's going on with COVID, but it's not very persuasive. It's not in a way that's convincing. It's in a way that's preaching to people. People don't want to be preached. You understand? People like to come up with the idea. People like to think that they've come up with the idea themselves. So you have to plant a seed and let them think about it and let them come to their decision. And this is the way I think that we're going to awaken people and get people to really realise what is going on in this country and globally. It's a global plan. And it's crazy how this has happened. I mean, you've got the introduction. I say the introduction. I mean, they've been around for a long time, but you know, the World Health Organization. And it's crazy to think that suddenly, you know, one point that we should always make sure that we remember is that the only people profiting off this are the billionaires. You know, me, you, normal people are suffering every single day, not knowing whether to pay their bill, not knowing whether they can pay their bills, whether they can get food, whether they can do this, do that, whether they can go outside. Does this change for the people at the top? No, because they don't apply to our rules. They don't apply to our law. Sorry, the laws don't apply to them. The laws that we have to abide by don't apply to them, and that's the way they see it. They're above us and we are below them, and that's the way it will always remain if we don't do something about it. And I don't mean a revolution. You know, like I said before, I don't incite violence, I don't incite anything like that. But we need to make people aware of what's going on. That's a very key point. So I'm going to carry on with the article now. I'm just going to go through it a little bit. It's not going to be a long one today, so it'll probably be another 10 minutes or so, but we'll see. We'll see how this article goes, and we'll see how it goes. Anyway, so the whole gender woman for no matter who agrees with it, that it won't just be Canada. We're simply just told. Okay, we need to take advantage of the situation before us to promote change. The members who were opposed and the ones who brought up key issues that would arise from such a thing were completely ignored. Our opinions and concerns were ignored. We were simply told to just do it. All I know is that I don't like it, and I think it's going to place Canadians into a dark future. It's in Vancouver, Canada, posted today, October the 14th. So October the 14th, 2020. So, there's a lot of information to take in there. And, like I said to you guys, I don't want to preach to you guys. I don't want to tell you this is the way it's going to be. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not here to try and change your mind per se. You know, I'm not looking to do that. You know, and you can't do that in one conversation anyway. You know, it's pointless. I want you guys to think about the way this is heading. Think about this from all angles. Think about how this affects all aspects of society. Who does it benefit and who doesn't it benefit? And look into them people. Okay, if it's benefiting people, how comes it's benefiting them people? Have they got ties? Have they got, we really need to promote this idea of looking into it, researching. Don't just assume you know the answers. That's one of the worst things to do, and And that's in every that's not just to do with COVID, that's in every aspect of life. Don't assume you know the answers to anything, because there's always someone out there that you can learn from and that you can take something from. You know, you may approach them and you may think, this person doesn't know what he's talking about. They might not know what they're talking about within that situation, but they might know what they're talking about with other situations. And everyone has something has something to offer that we can learn from. And that's a very key, important point. And I think once you start learning that, you can start treating people with more respect, and start respecting people's decisions. You know, because this is one of the things we like to do on this podcast, is promote thinking, freedom of thought, and promote the idea that we can all come together and have discussions. It doesn't have to be in a way that's confrontational. You know, we can have these conversations, disagree, and still go home every day and be happy. You know, this is one of the things that we want to promote. We want to promote healthy conversations. I don't even like the idea of a debate. A debate can be very resourceful. I think nowadays, it doesn't seem that debates, and I say nowadays, but I think we see a lot of people who are using debates as just a way to slander their opponent. And they do look at them as opponents, and that's not the way I see. When I'm having a discussion with someone, I don't look at them as an opponent. You know, if we disagree on viewpoints, I look at it as a learning curve. You know, because even if I don't agree with their point, it's key to understand how have they got to that decision. How have they come to that conclusion? You know, what have they heard? What have they listened to? What sources of information have they got that I haven't looked at? And take interest and look into their, you know, sources, hear their point of view, and if it still doesn't make sense to you, then you know maybe you're on the right track. And it's all about listening to every perspective, because everything has something you can learn from, whether it's directly from that point, or whether you can look at why people are saying that, or why are people thinking this. You know, because once you start understanding that, you can learn to accept it, and you learn to not be angry, and you kind of let go of it. And this is what we want to promote, you know. Don't feel bad, don't feel sad for what's going on, because in the end, we will all be okay. As long as we all come together. And that's a very key point. We are individuals, but we are also all one, and we all need to come together, because this is very important. And the freedom of society, you know, is in jeopardy here unless we do something about it. So I'm sorry today that it was a bit of a depressing one. Didn't have the happiest vibes, but you know, it was information that I felt was very key and very vital. I've been toying with the idea of doing this podcast for a few days, not knowing whether it would be okay and to post, and would this be okay for people? Would people listen? But the way I'm looking at it is, it needs to be out there, whether people listen or not. As long as it's there, it's accessible, you know, and we're helping people learn about this. That's all that matters. Obviously, as always, we want to encourage you guys to write your thoughts in the comment section, ask any questions that you may have. If you want to be on the podcast with us, we have only just started up, obviously, so we'd be more than happy to have anyone on if they'd like to challenge us. Maybe they'd want to talk with us about something, and we like to talk about all subjects. We're not all COVID. Soon, I don't know if it'll be this week, but it should be within the next few days. I'm going to have a podcast with my granddad. My granddad has been a musician for over 60 years. He had the opportunity to join the Rolling Stones. I'm just giving you a few points of his life. You know, he worked within the DJ industry. He's worked all throughout music. He's worked with, you know, hip hop. He's worked with all aspects of music. So we're going to do a podcast with him, and we're going to talk about the music industry, how it's changed, where it's at now, what is his thoughts, and we're going to do a big podcast with him. So it'd be interesting to see his perspective. I think a lot of people, if you're musically minded, if you like music, if you have a particular taste in music, come and check it out. You know, I think you'll really enjoy it. I'm quite excited to do a podcast with someone else on the channel. It's going to be quite interesting. It's going to be our first guest. And we've got a few ideas of other guests as well that we'd like to bring on. So, yeah, well, it looks like we've got some good plans for 2021. Even though it may look a bit bleak, we're going to stay positive, stay happy, and remember, guys, keep ascending. Keep ascending. You know, this is the whole reason we've got Ascending Souls as our name. You know, we want to promote this idea of ascending. You know, and rise and become more knowledgeable and expand yourself. That's what it's all about. Now, link to the Canadian report will be down in the description below. The link to our first 3 podcasts will be below. Also, a link to our Instagram will be down below as well. So remember, guys, let us know what you think in the comments. Let us know if you're interested to join on the podcast with us, have a talk with us. I'd like to say a big thank you, guys, because this is our 4th one now, and we're really starting to get the ball rolling, and we're really enjoying it. You know, it's been an experiment for us, and we think we're starting to get there. So I want to say thank you to everyone who has listened, whether you listened even for 30 or half an hour. It doesn't matter to us, as long as people are out there and they're engaging with us, and we want you guys to be talking with us, engaging with us. We want to be engaged with our audience. Sorry, I'm rambling on now, so I'll let you guys go, but thank you so much for listening. We can't thank you enough, and we'll see you next time.